Welcome, class. Today we will be learning about poetics.
Yay!
As you all know, lately there has been a shift in thinking from oral to literacy. So I thought a good idea would be to create a taxonomy of poetics. Today we will be analyzing and synthesizing mimesis. Now who can tell me some forms of mimesis?
Epic!
Tragedy. Comedy. Those are all correct, but did you know that each of these forms of mimesis can differ in 3 ways? Mimesis can differ in matter, subject, or method. Matter deals with rhythm, speech, or melody of a verse. Subject deals with the type of character a story is concerned with. Method is how the poet presents his story. He can do this by simple narration or by narrating from the point of view of one character.
Mr. Aristotle, what's the difference between a tragedy and an epic?
I'm glad you asked, Johnny. Let us first discuss what the two have in common. Both epic and tragedy have dramatic plots that are built around a single action. The stories must have a plot. They cannot just randomly cover a period of time. That would be history. Epics and tragedies both show universals, or things that we expect people to do or say. Unlike histories, epics and tragedies show us what could happen, not what has already happened. Epics and tragedies are both only concerned with the stories of morally serious men. Now let's look at some differences. Unlike tragedies, epics have no limit in length. In an epic, more things can happen that could not be executed on the stage. For example, you could have 2 things going on at the same time. This would be difficult to communicate on stage. Epics also leave more room for illogical moments, such as a story where 2 men are fighting and we forget that there are others around them that could intervene. On stage, this would be obvious. Obviously, all action occurs by narration in an epic. Now, tragedies, however, are limited to a certain time length. They need to be able to be performed in a single day. Tragedies use dialogue and song separately. All action occurs by the actors acting it out and speaking. There is no narration. Tragedies must all elicit pity or fear. In a tragedy, any scene not affecting the main action needs to be deleted.
Okay, Mr. Aristotle, I get it, but what makes up a tragedy?
Actually, Johnny, there are 6 aspects to tragedy making. Here I have them listed from least important to most. The least important of all is the arrangement for visuals on the stage, or the set. A good tragedy will be able to get across without a lot of fluffy sets and effects. After that is song making. More important than song making is speech. A good tragedy writer should know the difference between a command, a prayer, a statement, a threat, a question, or an answer. Third most important is thought. Thought is when the actor proves a point or declares some type of wisdom. This is also where emotions like pity, fear, and anger are rendered. Second most important is the characters. Characters should be morally capable, the good guys. They should fit their class, they should seem natural and humanly, and most important, they should be consistent and make sense. However, the most important aspect of tragedy making is the plot. A plot firstly must be whole. Whole means that it has a beginning, middle, and end. It must also be of the proper size and unity. Something that is too small to see or too large to see all at once cannot be beautiful because it cannot be experienced all at once. That is unity. A plot is especially interesting when things that happen by chance seem to have actually happened by design. There are 2 types of plots, simple and complex. A simple plot is where the actions follow a continuous single line. A complex plot involves a twist in the story. A good tragedy will have the complex plot. Now there are 3 aspects to the complex plot: peripeteia, recognition, and pathos. The turn in the story is otherwise known as the peripeteia. Peripeteia often leads to recognition, which happens when the main character comes to recognize some truth or person. There are 5 types of recognition. The first type is through a sign. A person might be recognized by a scar he has or by an amulet he's wearing. The second kind is where the person just comes out and says it. The third kind is when the main character remembers the information himself. The fourth kind is the illogical kind, like when they recognize someone because there is no one like them, so it must be them. Think, for example, the Cinderella's glass shoe story. The prince searches through all the kingdom trying to find the one maiden whose foot fits in the shoe. Are you telling me that there wasn't a single other girl in an entire kingdom whose foot wouldn't be the same size? The last kind is the result of events outside the poet's control. This is when the story was not originally invented by the poet, but that he has borrowed it from elsewhere. The third part of tragedy is the pathos. Pathos is when the tragedy evokes pity or terror. This is most commonly achieved by a murderous or cruel transaction such as wounding or killing. Pathos also can occur when a man goes from good fortune to bad because of a serious mistake. The most common of these mistakes is called hamartia. Hamartia is the ignorance of a universal truth. Furthermore, pity and terror should be coming from the plot, not from the actors. A scary mask shouldn't be why we are frightened. Now there are 4 ways that a tragedy can follow, and here I have them listed in order from weakest to best. The worst tragedy is when the main character refrains from the tragic action knowingly. That's not a tragedy at all. The second worst is when the main character knows what he is doing and does it anyway. That's just unnecessary. The second best way is when the action is done, then afterwards the character realizes the consequences. Once it's too late. Now that's the way to elicit pity. But the very best way, in my opinion, is when the action is thoroughly planned, then realized, then stopped. That way, we, the audience, are along for a whole ride. We feel pity when we think he's gonna do it, then relief when he doesn't. Now that I've listed the right ways to piece together a tragedy, here are some no-nos. First, do not show a prosperous man lose his fortune. That doesn't elicit pity. Second, do not show a poor man gain fortune. That has nothing to do with tragedy. Third, do not show an evil man falling from good fortune. This will not arouse pity. We might cheer. We want to feel bad for the character. Lastly, do not have your pathos element be enemy fighting enemy, because then no one gets any pity.
Mr. Aristotle, which one is better, tragedy or epic?
Well, let's see. Epic appeals to a higher brow society. It doesn't need crazy actors, and the poets are the ones who become famous in the end. Tragedy, on the other hand, is shorter, simpler, more vivid. It can have all the aspects of an epic, and it follows a single action. I'm gonna go with tragedy.
Okay.
Mr. Aristotle, what about comedy? Oh yes, comedy. I have much to say on that.